Borderlands 3 has so many different weapons, shields, and grenades, and as such, there's quite a few that I would love to see return in the upcoming Borderlands 4. There are also quite a few items that I would not like to see return, whether they be complete joke weapons or power corrupt versions of already existing weapons. Hey Vault Hunters, I'm Constant Canadian, and these are the 5, or technically 12 legendaries I don't want to see return in Borderlands 4. Starting off the list, we have the Binary Operator. The Binary Operator is a sniper rifle that was first introduced with the Arms Race DLC. It will always roll with a weapon damage of 2 on the item card. However, the weapon is a little bit more complex than that. The way this weapon works is there is a hidden damage value for each level, and if the enemy's current health is lower than this value, it will instantly die. Otherwise, it does 2 damage. While this sniper rifle can kill weaker things in normal mode, it is completely useless in endgame, as the hidden damage value is around 1 million, which sure sounds like a lot, but even the most basic of enemies in this game have an HP value of around 30 million at the very least. This leaves the Binary Operator in a completely unusable state in late game play, and I'm fairly certain that there are 0 people who would miss this weapon if it didn't appear in Borderlands 4. While we're on the topic, maybe just leave all of the weak gimmicky weapons in the past. Borderlands 3 and just Borderlands as a whole is no stranger to gimmicky weapons that are almost completely worthless. Items like the Borderlands 3 Infinity, Echo 2, Gettleburger, Boring Gun, and Long Musket. And those are just off the top of my head in Borderlands 3. There are a load of items in this franchise that are designed for nothing more than a quick haha that's kinda funny and nothing else. Don't get me wrong, gimmicks are fine, but the issue arises when they don't do any decent damage and have no purpose aside from a quick laugh. Maybe it's just me, but I really wish Gearbox would stop with all of these super weak gimmicky weapons. Next up, we have the Face Puncher, Blade Fury, and Fish Slap. Now, technically that's 3 items, but all 3 of these legendary items have one thing in common. Their damage counts as melee damage. And while that doesn't necessarily sound bad, especially in a game with so many flying enemies, all of these weapons far outperform any actual melee attack by a long shot. Our base melee attack with a Psycho Stabber at level 72 Mayhem 11 does 627,000 damage, and can be used once every second, which pretty easily comes out to 627,000 damage per second. The Face Puncher with 7 pellets does around 444,000 damage, which is less than the Psycho Stabber melee attack, but it can also shoot twice per second, which gives it around 888,000 damage per second. The Face Puncher also gets gun damage bonuses as well for some reason, meaning that the damage per shot could theoretically get higher than a melee attack will ever get with the right setup. Combine that with the fact that each pellet of the Face Puncher will activate melee skills or artifacts like Body and Mind and the Static Charge, and the Face Puncher is far stronger than your base melee attack. As for the Blade Fury, only 50% of its damage is counted as a melee attack, which means that with no boosts, it deals around 270,000 damage per shot. However, it also shoots 5 times per second, giving it a theoretical damage per second of 1.3 million. The Blade Fury also deals weapon damage equal to its card damage on top of its melee damage, which once again makes its damage way higher than anything an actual melee attack can do. The biggest offender though has to be the Fish Slap grenade. The Fish Slap is a rubberized grenade whose damage counts as melee damage. This grenade at level 72 Mayhem 10 has a listed damage of about 128,000, lower than a melee hit for sure. But the listed damage of the Fish Slap gets the same damage scaling as a regular melee attack, about 16 times, meaning that the actual damage of the Fish Slap is around the 3 million damage mark, about 5 times that of a regular melee attack. I'm not really against having a ranged option for melee damage. Again, flying enemies are everywhere in this series. However, I take issue with it when those ranged options become objectively stronger than an actual melee attack. Shooting a gun or throwing a grenade should not do more melee damage than your melee attack, and nobody will ever change my mind about that. Another weapon that I would really not like to see return in Borderlands 4 is the Free Radical. Actually, the Free Radical itself is a pretty fine gun with an interesting and fun special effect. But the problem I have primarily with the Free Radical is that it's a power corrupt version of another Maliwan pistol, the Beacon, which is itself another power corrupt version of yet another Maliwan pistol, the Hellshock. This has been a very common theme in Borderlands 3, for better or for worse. There are many weapons that are just power corrupt versions of already existing weapons, like the Monarch, which is just a stronger version of the Dictator, or the Kick Charger, which is just a massively better version of the Ion Cannon. The sheer amounts of power creep in this game is quite frankly out of control, and it really hurt the balance of this game overall, which becomes even clearer when you take a look at the HP values of certain enemies. Enemies like Wotan, for example. They're literally a raid boss, so surely they've got a pretty huge health bar, right? And if we look, they've got around 2.5 billion health, which certainly sounds large until you consider the fact that Scourge and Hemovorus have about 8 billion health, and the Seer has about 10 billion health. Okay, but those are just later endgame content, and sure, that is true. It's also true, however, that Psycho Reaver, the final boss of the 4th DLC, Psycho Krieg and his fantastic Fustercluck, has 3.5 billion health. 1 billion more than an actual intentional raid boss. This is a part of what caused the balance of Borderlands 3 to go all over the place, and it's very prevalent when looking at the increase of health values of the previous bosses as time went on. What I'm really trying to say is that I don't want power creep in Borderlands games, as all it really does is hurt the overall balance of the game. Whether it's the Monarch, Kick Charger, or Free Radical, power creep should stay far, far away from Borderlands 4. If you've made it this far into the video, chances are you're enjoying the content, and if that's the case, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel as it really helps out the channel, and you'll also make sure to never miss any of my future uploads. Now, this next entry on the list might be pretty controversial, but I very much would like for Borderlands 4 to do away with B, Revolter, Infernal Wish, Manawel style shields. I don't really have a problem with offensive legendary shields. Matter of fact, I loved the Flame of the Firehawk in Borderlands 2, and the Frozen Snowshoe is one of my favorite shields in Borderlands 3, which is moderately offensive. However, something really doesn't sit right with me with a shield whose sole purpose is making your attacks stronger. The Revolter gives the user 200% shock damage and 50% fire rate upon depletion for about 15 seconds, which is an insane buff for almost any build or situation. The Infernal Wish just adds an extra projectile to your fired weapon, which will literally double the damage of any single projectile weapon, and the Manawel upon slamming grants the wearer 90% damage reduction and 100% bonus shock damage while draining 9% of its shield capacity per second. All of these shields are essentially just another massive stat boost to our character. Thankfully, there are a load of different shields in this game that aren't just stat boosts, but I would really prefer if Borderlands 4 finally got rid of these shields that are ultimately just a gun strengthener. It was a huge relief for me at the end of Borderlands 3's first season pass when we didn't have anything even slightly resembling the B shield. And then Gearbox went and added 4 different shields that make an insane difference for damage in the second season pass. In my eyes at least, shields shouldn't be primarily offensive and should be more focused on crowd control and defensive abilities. Before we get into the next item, there are a few items that I do want to return, but not in their current state. Weapons like the Bone Shredder and the Hellfire are the first ones that come to my mind. Both are very long-standing uniques in this franchise, having been in every Borderlands title since the beginning. However, both of these weapons are getting worse and worse with each entry, and as much as I love traditions, if these guns are going to continue to get worse and worse, I'd rather them just stay in the past. We just finished talking about shields whose sole purpose is buffing damage. However, there is one weapon whose entire purpose is massively buffing other sources of damage. The Guardian Angel, one of the final additions to this game. According to the card of this shotgun, weapon damage is increased based on how far away from the target you are. In actuality though, this weapon increases the damage of everything you do. And while this doesn't sound too bad, the It's Piss does it as well, albeit a little differently. The Guardian Angel increases damage by up to 500% at 25 meters. And it's also V2 damage, which makes it multiplicative with almost every other source of damage in the game. Now, there is an argument to be made for the Guardian Angel, as thanks to its massive increase in damage, it makes a lot of very unique and off-meta builds possible. But if the unique build needs a Guardian Angel to work, then maybe it wasn't meant to be a build in the first place. Ironically, I think the Guardian Angel would be a cool concept as a sniper if the buff was weaker and only applied to the weapon's damage. But in its current form, the Guardian Angel just does too much for way too little effort, and I don't want to see it anywhere near Borderlands 4. Anyway, that's going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Are there any weapons that you don't want to see return in Borderlands 4? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a fantastic day.